Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my spoiler-free review for the new Aretha Franklin biopic, Respect, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Yes, indeed. You can see this in theaters right now. It's an in-theater release only for the time being. Not too many of those out there these days, but this is one of them. Set aside some time, though, if you want to see this. It is almost 2.5 hours. So we're going to talk about whether I think the movie is worth your time or not. But before we do that, I want to welcome you into Dan Reviews It. Thank you for finding this video. Please consider subscribing down below there, maybe hitting that notification bell even to get all my notifications of brand new movie and TV review videos. You can, of course, like and comment below as well. Love to have you doing that. That all helps the channel out. So let's talk about this movie. This is one of my most anticipated of the year. I know a lot of people have been waiting for the various Marvel movies or what have you, but for me, music biopics rank up there among some of the great films out there. Walk the Line and Ray and Rocket Man and all of these things. And Jennifer Hudson is, for me, one of the greatest singers out there. And Dreamgirls, one of my all-time favorite movies. She was so brilliant in that. And Aretha Franklin, obviously fantastic. Her work, speaks for herself. So big fan there as well. One of my favorite documentaries of the last few years was Amazing Grace, which was a documentary about the making of the Amazing Grace album, which does factor into this film as well. So before we get too far ahead of the game, I just wanted to profess my love up front for Jennifer Hudson and Aretha Franklin, which might mean this has a lot to live up to. I don't know. Because here's the thing. I have some mixed feelings about this movie. So first, I guess let's talk about some of the negatives. The biggest negative, I suppose, is that it is very standard for a music biopic. A lot of them are a dime a dozen. I think it is one thing that set Rocket Man very much apart from a lot of their, contemporaries because of the execution and the nature of how they put together the story. It was something new. It was something interesting. Here, it is very by the numbers. We start out, in the early 50s when she's like 10 years old, and we see her, going through several struggles. I won't talk about them here for spoiler reasons, but, if you know a lot about Aretha Franklin's life, maybe you already know. Some of it I did not know. To be completely honest, I love her music, but I've never really dove into her history as a person. Like I did with Tina Turner, let's say, when the Tina Turner book came out, and I've done it with a few different books. In fact, I read the Johnny Cash book before Walk the Line came out. But anyway, some of that stuff I didn't know. But so we start there, and then we move on to, okay, well, she's now a very, prolific singer in her house, in her neighborhood, in her church. Where do we go from here? Oh, we go to the record label up in New York, Columbia Records, and we talk to people there, and then we see her skyrocket into fame. It's very, very by the numbers for a music biopic. We don't spend a ton of time looking into Franklin's perspective on things or thinking about, her inner monologue or, what she's feeling during these things. It's just sort of a this happened, then this happened, and oh, this happened after that. It's very, very standard stuff in that regard of the storytelling. However, I will say, speaking of the Amazing Grace documentary film from, I think it was 2 years ago at this point, or maybe it was last year, but it's all kind of a blur with COVID. But either way, this movie ends with the making of that documentary. It was supposed to be released as a documentary, 40 years ago or something, and for whatever reason, I guess it wasn't released, and so they put it together and released it last year. But the movie ends, this movie, Respect, ends on sort of the making of that album and the making of that documentary, and I think that was a great way to end it, because you know what? Everything that came after that is gravy. It does sort of go over the little cliff notes in the, before we get to the credits of, okay, then this happened. And, oh, she was the first woman that got, into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And then this happened, whatever. But Amazing Grace is her pinnacle. It is her best-selling album of all time. And yes, she had, a huge comeback in the late 80s with some MTV stuff, and obviously sang, into the Obama administration and all of that. And it's covered in the Cliff Notes, before the credits. But I think that was a smart idea to end the movie there. Now, one other slight negative I have about this movie is, believe it or not, Jennifer Hudson's performance. Now, this comes with a huge caveat, okay? Because let's move into the positives of the film. The performances here are outstanding, and I'm not just talking about Jennifer Hudson, which I'll get into the positives and the negatives of that, but Forrest Whitaker plays her father. Look, he's always good. I've been enjoying him in Godfather of Harlem lately, but he's always great, and he has a very, nuanced bit of performance here. Audra McDonald, Tony-winning star, plays Aretha's mother. And then the biggest surprises, Marlon Wayans and Tituss Burgess, who almost exclusively are known for their comedy chops, and not just known for their comedy, but for their outrageous comedy. Like Tituss, does the Titus character on Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. Marlon has done, like the haunted house spoof movies, and he's done White Chicks, and, he does all of this outrageous comedy. They both turn in super, super dramatic performances. Marlon plays Aretha's manager and husband, and Tituss just really shows up more towards the end as the Reverend during the Amazing Grace sessions. But both of them are so good. Marlon's almost unrecognizable. They didn't really change his face too much, put a mustache on him, but he just really, really developed into somebody else. So I thought he did a great job. And all the singing was done by the people. Look, what's his face? Rami Malek was an amazing Freddie Mercury. That movie had a lot of issues. My original B grade is way too high for that movie after I looked into all the wild inaccuracies of that. But not only that, he didn't do his own singing, which, that's fine. But look, Renee Zellweger did Judy Garland's singing. Taron Egerton did Elton John's. Joaquin Phoenix did Johnny Cash. So, obviously, Jamie Foxx did Ray. So, I do love when a performer really, goes all out and sings. But not only that, everybody in this movie is singing, on the take. I don't think it's necessarily, live to tape like they did in Les Mis or whatever. But, Audra McDonald, obviously Tony-winning singer, so she's always great. But everybody else, the backup singers, everybody's doing their own singing, and it's incredible. And by the way, before I get to the specific Jennifer Hudson performance, Marc Maron here, great again. He's always great as like the 70s record manager, or the 80s ladies wrestling manager or whatever. Marc Maron, again, known for mostly comedy, but turning in a really good dramatic performance here. But so Jennifer Hudson, she may very well get nominated for this role, and it would be deserved. Aretha Franklin herself, before she passed, lobbied for Jennifer Hudson to take the reins on this biopic. And in fact, after she won the Oscar for Dreamgirls, she met with Aretha, and Aretha told her, "You're going to win another Oscar playing me." Bold words. Who knows? The year is still early with the Oscar performances, but I think she'll at least be in contention and in the conversation for a nomination, because she's outstanding here. And more than the singing, I'll put the singing aside for a second. The acting here, it's so crazy that she came from American Idol. She has got so much talent. She's great in these more emotional moments, the more dramatic moments, and then the singing. So here are my issues with the singing. Is that Jennifer Hudson does have a very distinct voice of her own, much like Aretha. And so because of that, I found that it was hard for her to capture the singing voice properly of Aretha, because Hudson has such a bold, bombastic voice all her own. And honestly, in some ways, I think she is a better singer than Aretha Franklin. In some ways, she's got the gift from God. She is one of the greatest singers, honestly. I could go on and on about Jennifer Hudson and her singing. Um, so, but Aretha obviously, has a very bold voice, but she's got a distinct voice, and Jennifer Hudson's voice is so specific to her that I think it was a little hard for her to kind of um, measure up to the Aretha Franklin style of singing. I mean, she tried to get the style right, but the vocal intonations, it's very Jennifer Hudson. Whereas like Jamie Foxx, okay, well, we didn't really know how he sang before Ray for the most part. So he, did kind of a Ray Charles impression, and it was great. Same with like Taron Egerton. We've only really heard him sing in the movie Sing, and he was doing an Elton John song there. So okay, we know him as singing Elton John songs. But Jennifer Hudson's got such a specific voice. But that being said, the mannerisms, and especially seeing the Amazing Grace, documentary recently. She's got those mannerisms down to a T. She spent 6 months learning piano and sort of watching Aretha videos to sort of get those mannerisms down. She's got them. And they've obviously, put wigs on her that are matching the time period and whatever. Time period wise, everything also checks out, the costumes and all of that and the set pieces. They're all perfect for the time. That's fine. I expect no less from something like this. But that is my sort of one complaint about her performance, is that her voice is so distinctly Jennifer Hudson that it was hard at times to sort of take her as Aretha, unless as like, okay, well, this is Jennifer Hudson doing her best Aretha. And again, sometimes it's even hitting, other highs. But look, I know there was a National Geographic special earlier this year, or a miniseries called Aretha, with Cynthia Erivo, who can also sing. We've heard her sing on the Oscars and other things. But look, it wasn't sanctioned by the family. I never had any interest in watching it, especially because I knew this was coming out. I'm like, there's going to be no comparison. So look, the bottom line is we've talked long enough about this movie, so I'm going to grade it for you now. Yes, there's some issues, most notably the sort of standard telling of the story, but these performances are home runs. This was originally supposed to be released last Christmas, and of course, because of COVID, didn't happen. But it I think was an Oscar hopeful last year. A lot of movies do release like Christmas week in hopes in being for being an Oscar contention then come January. And it works especially well for Black themed movies, because then it runs right into Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, which he does play a part in this movie. He was a friend of Aretha's family. And then it plays right into Black History Month. It worked great for Selma. It worked great for Hidden Figures. And it keeps those movies in the conversation longer. Yeah, it would have been great if we could have had this last Christmas. But hopefully voters will still remember this come Oscar time. They certainly snubbed Taron Egerton for Elton John, but let's not make the same mistake. Obviously, there's still a lot of movies we haven't seen this year, but I think Hudson really, really just gives an outstanding performance as the Queen of Soul. So I leave Respect with a B+. I never felt the length either. Like I said, it's 2 hours and 25 minutes. I did not feel it. I was there the whole ride. And the great music, of course, doesn't hurt things either. So thank you so much for watching. I know this was a slightly longer one, but something I'm very passionate about, of course, music. So thank you for sticking with me, and we'll see you back here next time on Dan Reviews It. Bye.